Good afternoon, everyone. And today I'm going to talk about swine health and biosecurity in outdoors raised swine. This is part of the webinar series on managing land and livestock on small acreage. My name is Alda Pires, and I am Associate Professor in Cooperative Extension for Urban Agriculture and Food Safety. I'm based at the School of Veterinary Medicine, UC Davis. So, starting what is biosecurity? Biosecurity is the management measures or practice taken to prevent disease agents from being introduced or spreading to and from animal populations or their proximity. So biosecurity is it's related to on-farm food safety, on herd health, animal welfare. So how we articulate or we prevent disease exposure, how we implement those biosecurity practices and promote well-being and health of animal will allow us to have a better animal health and a safe animal products on that farm. Many diseases can also affect people, and they are called zoonotic diseases or being introduced to the US from other countries as foreign, and they are called foreign animal disease or FAD. Zoonotic disease is that it's a disease can be transmitted between animals and humans as salmonellosis, the swine flu, and there can be two ways, can be from animals to humans, the most common, but also humans to animals can happen. Endemic disease is a disease present in overall swine population as Pires, enzootic pneumonia, Ph.D. So FAD or foreign animal disease is a disease was never found or previously eradicated, so eliminate in US population. This disease is reportable to the state of federal animal health authorities, as for example, African swine fever, classical swine fever, and foot-and-mouth disease. Disease can be spread from animal to animal by 5 main routes. And in this graph, it represents the 5 main routes. Those are through aerosols, so droplets, direct contact between the animals, between pig to pig, fomites. So fomites are objects that can carry diseases as our boots, coveralls, vehicles, and so on. Another route will be oral or through feed or water, and vectors. So vectors are animals, insects, as flies or ticks. They can carry disease and transmit between one animal and another animal. On this slide, I'm representing the most common swine diseases by transmission of routes and all routes. And what I want to represent or transmit on this slide is most of diseases in swine, they can be transmitted by more than one route. So most of them was 3 or 4 routes can be transmitted. So understanding how the transmission of potential routes for transmission of disease is crucial to prevent that disease is introduced on the farm or transmit from animal to animal. So as a red triangle, it represents a zoonotic disease. Diseases are transmitted from animals, swine to humans, as Brucella suis, leptospirosis. And as a round circle is the foreign animal disease. Disease, they are not in our country, and we want to keep it free of those diseases. African swine fever, classical swine fever, foot-and-mouth disease, and so on. So most of these diseases, besides they have consequence for the animal health or swine health and economical consequence, also they will have consequence for trade and for ability for us to export pork or another animal products, in this case pork. So depending on those diseases of the series they are, or if they are a foreign animal disease or endemic disease, they need to be reportable to CDFA, in our case in California, to California Department of Food and Agriculture. So on this fact sheet on the right side, I have the first columns is the emergency conditions. So are those diseases, they need to be reported in 24 hours by the veterinary official. That disease, the FAS, so the foreign animal disease are African swine fever, classical swine fever, Nipah virus, and foot and mouth disease. On yellow, the second column are those diseases, they should report about 2 days of discovery. For example, the brucella suis, so the porcine brucellosis and pseudorabies. Why? These are diseases they are eliminate or control in our conventional and swine facilities production. And we might see them in feral pigs, and I will talk about that later on. And then another list of diseases specific for swine, they should be monitored and reported in 30 days. So why is this? Because we know some of these, they are introduced either on the swine population or in the country. Some of them are extremely infectious, so they transmit very fast from animal to animal. So for example, the African swine fever, we don't have it in our country, but we have some cases, they show up in this side of the continent in Dominican Republic. And another diseases, they have huge consequence in terms of economy and loss of those farms and animals. So part of, to avoid those diseases to come to our farms or country is to keep a high or biosecurity practice. And when we're talking about biosecurity practice, there is a distinction between the ones we can implement in conventional indoor raise pigs or swine production. Those sometimes they are closed herds, they are all in and out. That means we remove all the animals from that barn and start with a new group of animals. There is high biosecurity, the number of people can enter on the farms. Some of them, they have wash in and wash out, means if you go to the farm to take a shower, wear their own clothes and specific pee. And then what are the biosecurity practices we can actually apply in the more small farms as outdoor or pasture-based farms? So there is some adjustment from those practices. And the goal here is to decrease the risk of introduction of diseases and decrease the risk of transmission of those diseases, because zero risk, it's almost impossible. So for the next slides, I'm going to talk some of those biosecurity practices we can implement on these outdoors small farms of swine. And start with new replacements and quarantine. So when we decide to have new animals, and this is not just for swine, but other livestock species, should we buy or borrow those animals? Sometimes we might borrow the boar from the neighbor. So make sure that those animals come from disease-free herds. And principle, those they are test negative for brucellosis, porcine epidemic diarrhea, PD, pseudorabies, and Pires. So all these except brucella, they are actually virus, and they are, once they introduce on the farm, on the group of animals, it's difficult. Their eradication means many years of vaccination, eliminate animals, and so on. So we want to make sure we're not bring those animals with this potential virus to our farm. Once we acquire new animals, we should isolate for at least 30 days. 30 days will be ideally, so in isolated areas. Also, if you have sick animals, those sick animals should be isolated and separate from healthy animals. So having a quarantine for these new introduced animals on the farm. And this time, these 30 days, will give us time to check their health status, to do some blood testing, vaccination, so vaccine those animals, and for them also adjust a new diet and new environment. So how to keep those pigs healthy? And I'm going to talk in a general way. So of course, to have healthy pigs, we need to take in consideration their nutrition, their environment, vaccination, and so on. But here I'm going to focus more on diseases and how to avoid transmission of those diseases. So the bottom line is proper care is the foundation for preventing disease. So we should provide to those animals clean water, good food, so the enough nutrients, diet, a balanced diet, and clean bedding. And another question will be, should we vaccinate our animals once they arrive, or should we vaccinate and what, against what? And that depends what disease we have on the farm, how endemic is certain disease in your region, and to help you on that decision, we should talk with your veterinary, so have a veterinary client-patient relationship. So the veterinary will help you to come up with a protocol, a vaccination protocol, adapt and or adjust to our farm needs. Another consideration is, in order to avoid spreading of disease, we should have a workflow, meaning we should work first with the young animals, so the piglets, because they are younger, they have less defenses, or their immune system is less developed, followed by older pigs and healthy pigs, new acquired purchase animals, and pigs sick pigs at last. So we start with the more healthy, more vulnerable animals population and move to the ones with higher risk, could be the ones we just bought it or the ones they are sick. Also, some considerations about biosecurity, in part because we want to provide a comfortable and we're concerned about welfare of the animals and we don't cause any additional stress on the animals, is relating to the shelter, especially those animals who are keep them outdoors. Something to keep in mind is all animals and in particular swine, they have this thermal neutral zone. So it's on this graph figure, I have represented the thermal climate for growing pigs with deep bedding. So any animal, they have their comfort zone or thermal neutral zone, means the temperature that those animals are actually comfortable and that it doesn't cause any stress on them. And that will depend on age. So on this graph, if you can see, as younger they are or smaller the pigs are, the upper limit and lower limit in terms of of the temperature and colder temperatures are narrow. As the animal grows and is bigger, actually their thermal neutral zone is wider. What this means is the piglets are more sensitive to oscillations of temperatures, and we need to provide that environment in order of them don't be too cold or too warm. So on this first figure on the left, what I've represented is on conventional farming in swine. This is a barn built to have about 1,000 pigs for finishing phase, and what these owners, so they were placing the piglets after weaning. And what we see as we arrived to the barn was this, what we call donut shape. So the piglets, they were cold, so they lay down around to the heating source, to the lamp, but it's so hot or so close, they kind of display in this donut shape because in the middle is impossible for them, it's too hot. So there was some adjustment they need to have on these heating systems. On the middle is a different, it's a farrowing unit from a pasture-based system where the piglets and the sow, they are indoors, but the bedding is mostly dirt. So what we see is these piglets, they are cold, they are all piled up because they are cold. So and part of this to have, so the thermal neutral zone and the comfortable temperature depends on age, depends as well on the region where we live and season facilities. And in California, we know, at least in most of Central Valley, you get very high temperatures in the summer. So what I've here represented is different ways or different versions, I'll say, the pasture outdoors pigs and how the owners try to provide shelter and decrease the effect of the weather.
So on the first picture on the left side, we have a sow with the piglets, where this farm, they have these walls, so they have these areas where pigs can cool down during the summer. Actually, they are filled with water, and the pigs can cool down during the summer. And they have a kind of semi-permanent pasture pens. So they have big pens where pigs, they are distributed depending on production stage, but it's a semi-permanent pasture. While in the middle, you have a more rotational pasture type. So they're finishing pigs where they are on pasture, and the farm has these trailers that actually provide shade during the summer. And these trailers, they can move around on the farm as they move to different pastures. Another shelter, more permanent, is a rotation grazing, more permanent structure where the pigs can protect from the sun. In certain areas in California, you might not need these shelters, or because the temperature is cooler and more close to the coast, or maybe have areas where we have mostly a lot of trees and provide some of that shade to the animals. So bottom line, being mindful about the environment where you are, how those pigs may be out of their thermal neutral zone, and how we can make them more comfortable, either provide shade, areas for cool down. I've seen also sprinklers being on for helping cooling down. Of course, if you are more in the foothills or in the mountain areas, you might have the snow, and how we can provide either having them indoors in the winter or very deep bedding so they can keep their body temperature. Another consideration related with shelter facilities is how to keep those animals away from wildlife and wild pigs or feral pigs away from where keep wildlife and wild pigs out of pig areas. Part because these wildlife and feral pigs, they can bring diseases to the domestic pigs. So you might think about a more permanent pig-proof fence. And this is a farm where they have visitors, or sometimes in the summer they have feral pigs, they cross and they actually are in contact with the pigs. So we know that pigs, they really root deep, and they can actually, if they are not below the surface a certain distance, they can actually remove the fences. So a more permanent fencing system to avoid the contact with feral pigs. Here should have two fences, actually double fence, because direct contact will be possible through the fence, or have a less permanent fencing as electrical fence when you're moving the pigs from one field to another field. And why is that important? And I will bring here the example of feral pigs. That's the one that's the biggest concern, or it's a great concern in California and in other states. It's feral pigs. So what is a feral pig? Feral pig is actually were domestic pigs that breed with wild boars. They are brought from Europe, and they have all kinds of, you can see, they can be very like a wild boar, as this picture on top, or they can look very big and look more like a domestic pig. So the population, this is on 2016, but we know the population is growing, and they lead to a great damage in terms of agriculture, on crops, and also the potential transmission of diseases. So what happened is, in California, have feral pigs in all the counties except one. And we know that these feral pigs, they can carry diseases that we already control them in domestic conventional pigs, as for example, swine brucellosis, Brucella suis, pseudorabies, or Algeski are diseases they control in our domestic pigs, and we see them on feral pigs. So if there is direct or indirect contact between feral and domestic pigs outdoors, you can introduce these diseases back to the domestic population. So the USDA Wildlife Service, what they do a control surveillance program. And here's just the list of those diseases they control, they test. And here's just the second slide I'm representing, just to give an idea
where we found those diseases. Brucella suis is the first on the left. So they're testing, they have a surveillance program to test several counties on the state. They are in blue or orange, and they are orange are the counties they are positive for Brucella suis. So Brucella suis again is a zoonotic disease. It's been eradicated in domestic conventional pigs, but we have seen some cases, there was an outbreak in New York State in human cases that was due to prior contact between feral pigs and domestic pigs. In addition, pseudorabies or Algeski virus, they are not considered zoonotic disease, but can infect several species besides the swine, and we see a much bigger distribution or presence in another states. So just this, what onto these two slides is we have feral pigs across the state. They can bring disease to your swine, to your animals, and those diseases can be either just infect animals or can be actually have bigger consequence and be what we call zoonotic disease and infect us as well. So the importance to keep the two populations, the domestic pigs and feral pigs, separate and not avoid the contact. Another aspect of biosecurity is wildlife pest control regarding the rodents and insect populations. So it's important because both of them, either they are vectors or they can transmit diseases as rodents that they can affect not just swine, but humans. So start with mosquitoes, so eliminate standing water. So mosquito breeding areas do not form, at least the standing water. As I mentioned, rodents carry disease, they affect not just swine, but humans as well. For example, leptospira can lead to abortions, infertility in swine, and losses on your farm. We know that the rodent control requires persistence and commitment, and understanding the important difference between mice and rats can help us the different measures we put in place to reduce that population. We know that we are in the farm environment, so it's common see mice or rats. What we want to reduce that population, want to reduce the contact with our domestic animals or contamination of the feed that you are feeding to the pigs. So start with mice. They are mostly vegetarian. They are shy and tend to avoid contact with humans. They're not good swimmers and can drink water less frequently. Normally, their nest site is close to the food source, between 10 feet to 30 feet, and they have a conservative behavior. So they tend to follow the same tendencies, same feeding routes. While rats, they eat a wider range of foods, such as eggs, birds, small animals. They're less shy, they swim well, and they require water daily. They tend to nest farther from the food source. And they will change behavior if find better food or shelter. So understanding the presence of mice or rats help us how to have in place the better rodent control. We mentioned both of them. What happened with the rats and mice? They're looking to feed. So think about where I store my feed for the livestock on animals, how we can keep that feed protect from the access to the rodents, so eliminate their food. Here is an example, depending of course of your size, maybe to have with the feed in containers with a lid. Make sure that you clean up the spilled food after feed the animals. Because if the rodents and wildlife, they don't have access to feed, they will go somewhere else. So try to reduce that available feed, so actually can reduce that population. And then there are other different rodent controls. You can work with your IPM or farm advisor how to implement those to have more aggressive on that control of rodents. Here I have this nice picture I took from internet. We normally have cats or cats in the barn, but the cats can always bring also some of disease, example toxoplasmosis. So if he's out there, you have a huge feral population. Think about how I can decrease that feral cats population on my farm, so we can actually decrease the potential exposure to diseases brought by feral animals. Now moving to traffic control. So what is traffic control? It's the movement of people, animals, vehicles, so cars and equipment. So what do you have to keep in mind? Don't let visitors and workers bring disease to your pigs. So we mentioned that fomites, so our boots, our hands, the vehicles, the cars, they can bring these virus and bacteria to the farm. So a good idea, and I'll talk a little bit more, have your farm or your pasture lay out what we call outside and inside of pig areas. So in the way that we have a strict access to pig areas, pastures and farming areas from those visitors, and allow only people who need to enter the pig area inside, ensure that they clean and disinfect shoes and foot baths and wear clean coveralls before entering. So if we have a farm tours or open farm or a pet farm, so think about how you have the layout of the visitors, what the policy I should implement in order to minimize that potential exposure to the visitors or bring to potential disease bring by the visitors in another way around too. And this is the same. So as I was mentioned, I will share later on some of these resources. This is a map of animals with outdoor access, not maybe a little bit different from what we see in these pasture-based systems, but the principle is the same. So think about the layout of my farm and how I can define what you call line of separation. That line of separation is in red here. So it's a line of separation where there are animals and there is another access to the trucks, access to the people. And outside that line of separation, we have a line, perimeter buffer area in blue. So in the way that we have a flow and the movement of the cars or trucks hauling pigs and garbage, they will not crossing this line of separation. So there'll be, here in yellow will be the vehicle movement, animals, transport vehicles, delivers. So if you see here in yellow, these arrows, so they are actually outside of that red area or the line of separation of the animals. So this is important because so we know that the trucks, cars, they can bring diseases and how we can minimize that potential cross contamination between different areas. Not just the visitors, but employees, but as well as. So the owners and the people working on the farm, we can carry the disease home. So when we visit a location with other pigs or pig owners, how to keep these potential germs or bacteria away from your farm. So keep in mind, clean and disinfect the shoes and vehicle and shower or change the clothes if you are in a premise, or with ideally avoid parking near pig areas. And ideally wait before you work with your pigs overnight if possible. Actually, in the high biosecurity premises as conventional farms, some of them, they will have the policy that visits employees with pigs, they cannot contact animals between 24 and 48 hours. So we keep that high biosecurity premise and decrease the risk of introduction of diseases. The same will apply when you take animals or visit fairs, and there is more specific recommendations for fairs that we should have, practice we should have. And if you are interested, I can share those resources later on. Another aspect will be the cleaning and disinfection. So equipment and facilities, they should be clean and disinfected. And of course, it can be a challenge. So if you are as this pasture or this facility where we have the animals in semi-permanent pens, where the ground is just dirt, so the clean and disinfection make less sense. But how we might make imagine if you have a parasites problems, I will talk later on. So how we can reduce those parasites in the soil. Think about maybe give some rest to the soil, maybe put new topsoil, maybe just till some of the soil. So think about how we can break the cycle either of parasites or certain diseases we are facing in that farm. Here on the right, what we have is a layout from the Center for Food Security and Public Health, and this is in Iowa, a website. They have a lot of resources I will share later on. And I really like this layout about different steps of cleaning and disinfection. And this applies for equipment, applies for vehicles and so on. The cleaning step actually is more important sometimes than disinfection. So about the first 4 steps, so remove all grossly visible debris, wash the area or item with water and detergent, rinse after the clean area to remove the detergent, and allow the area dry completely. So these 4 steps actually remove about 80% of potential germs or bacteria. Why? Because a lot of disinfectants, if we don't do a good job to remove the gross contamination organic material, most of disinfectants will not work, as for example, bleach. So after have that area clean, disinfection, we should select apply appropriate disinfectant. There are different disinfectants labeled for animal facilities, and think about, you need to have the right concentration and the right contact time. And do not forget to rinse back, so we want to remove any residual disinfectant. So this is the different steps for disinfection and cleaning for either for facilities, for the barn, if it's possible, being cleaned and disinfected, or another equipment. Also take in consideration is about manure management, carcass disposal. I will not go much in detail on this aspect on biosecurity, but we know that manure can carry bacteria, parasites, virus, and how we're going to remove that manure. Or are my animals mostly indoors, and how often I clean their bedding? How I going to use that manure? I'm going to do a composting, and the composting process, what will allows for inactivate and kill actually some of the bacteria. They are harmful for us, as for example, foodborne pathogens. They also allowed for metabolize some of the antibiotics and another drugs. They allow for reduce the weed pressure and allowed also for break part of the parasites cycle. So how we think about is the manure actually spread all on my plot or field or pen, or are we doing in pile up of that manure? I'm going to do composting or not, and where I'm going to put that pile. So having that in your farm plan as well. And the carcass disposal, also think about where I can dispose my carcass. If I have many animals sick, I should, how we can protect that, not have those, how we can dispose those carcass so they'll not be a source of infection for the healthy animals. So I went overview for several biosecurity practice or guidelines. They are very general. So what we should have, we should write the farm biosecurity plan, review it, use it, review it, and update it. So there are many resources out there about fact sheets and biosecurity plans. And sometimes the difficulties are so many resources, but there are few that actually applies to outdoors pigs, applies to small farms, or applies to farms with more than one species. So here I'm giving 2 examples, so with a checklist. So think how I'm doing with my farm. Am I putting my animals at risk, high risk to be sick or be getting sick? So this is a very simple checklist. One is provided by USDA APHIS, and another one is a 4-page, very easy to go through. Think about, am I protecting your swine? What I'm doing about vehicles equipment, what I'm doing with animal movement or manure or animal products. Says yes and no, and make you think about well, should I change something in my practice or my daily to reduce that risk? So with that in mind, and because we know there's not many resources for outdoors pasture-based systems and diversified farms, we actually have a project going on that's in collaboration with UC Davis, Colorado State, and Washington State. And what we're doing is summarize and having all the most important resource, or the ones we thought was the most important, and adapt to small farms resource for biosecurity, checklists, fact sheets, and so on, that you can start working in your own biosecurity plan. So during the winter from January to March, we had 8 webinars series about biosecurity in general, and one about poultry. And those webinars are actually, you can have access, they are all uploaded on your webpage. And if you go to this Farm PPE webpage, you find all different resources for swine and other species, cattle, small ruminants, and poultry. So our idea is to have one place where farmers can go and read and learn more about biosecurity and how they can adapt that to their farms. We expect in the fall have a new series specific on species, and also we are recruiting farms to help you to work with farmers on their own biosecurity plan. So this summer, we'll be working in the different states. So I'll be working lead the one in California, where we visit the farms with the students and faculty member extension specialists, and we work with the farmers and go through those fact sheets and come up with a biosecurity plan for their own farm. So if you are interested, please email me or contact us and that you are interested, and we discuss further when you can visit. It will not take much of your time. So we'll have 2 visits, a part of 2 weeks or so. And we have 2 blocks. So the first block is the first 3 weeks of June 20. And then I have another 2 blocks until another 3 weeks. So you can sign up for the first block or the second block. So here's the contact and the QR code if you are interested to work on your on-farm biosecurity plan this summer. So now I want to just move a little bit, not so much biosecurity or infectious diseases, but another disease in general, and how some of the diseases and considerations in terms of husbandry to have in mind when we're working with outdoor pigs production. So here in this slide, I just have the potential problems or diseases by topics or by areas. And what I want to come across on this slide is just show that a lot of these problems, they are not related to just infectious disease. They are actually management and some of less not so good husbandry practice. So for example, reproductive problems, abortion and fertility. So extreme weather conditions or very cold droughts or hot weather, they can actually lead to abortion or fertility problems. That's why I mentioned before how important it is to keep the animals or provide an environment they are actually in their thermal neutral zone, and they can keep their body temperature within normal range. So they will keep their body temperature normal range unless it's very extreme, but what we'll see is animals under stress, they grow less, they might not get pregnant, they might abort it. So important to keep that environment, thermal environment. Another consideration is about the feed intake. So how important is the diet, and to be a balance and provide the different micronutrients and so on. Lameness and another loss about condition sometimes is related with more musculoskeletal and problems. For example, an environment as wetland, rocky land, that leads to lameness and on their feet, problems with their feet. Also the breed, you consider that some of these breeds we use or we have, they are they were improved genetically to be indoors. So now I'm going to put these pigs outside. How they will, they are not adapt some of them to be outside with sun exposure. So think about sunburn, if you don't have wallows, or what happened with white breeds. So what you see sometimes for these production systems, you see breeds more robust, or they are heritage breeds, so they are actually more resistant and robust to be outdoors. On specific infectious diseases, I mentioned briefly some of the endemic diseases and disease. Some of those endemic diseases, we know they are in general population, swine population. For some that we have vaccines, for some we don't. And so that's work with your veterinary. Do you have a problem leptospira? Maybe it's contaminated water around. Maybe there is exposure to rodents. So if you have abortion, what we call abortion storm. So a lot of sows getting aborted, maybe they were exposed to leptospira. Talk to your veterinarian. What I can do about it? Is there vaccines and so on? Erysipedia is a case of we have vaccines available and so on. Now moving to parasites, and especially because we have animals outdoors, we have on pasture, and some of these parasites that they are on their gastrointestinal tract or longhorns, they have a cycle that goes through the pasture or through the grass. So they are constantly exposed either to the eggs or larvae. So how we can decrease that exposure and think about your pasture and rotation of pastures. Do we have a deworming program? Is my dewormer working? And again here, having a veterinary work with you and identify where you have, where if you are having a parasite problem, either because you see the internal parasites on their fecal or because you have external as lice and ticks, maybe fecal screen if you think you have a parasites problem. If in the slaughterhouse, they show a lot of the livers with these white spots or milk spots, that's some of all tracks of parasites, and how we can stop that cycle, because these parasites, they really part of larvae and eggs, they are on soil, they are on the grass. So think how we can, most of the times is a combined approach. It's a good management of pastures, of rotation of the wallow areas, have a deworming program. So talk with a veterinarian. If you are organic certified, thinking that there are a few can use in organic production, and you cannot use on animals, they are for slaughter. So the management of parasites, it's a multi-phase or multifactor approach, because not just a dewormer, you solve the problem or you reduce that exposure. So working on parasites, on these different infectious diseases, again, develop a veterinary client-patient relationship. Work with your veterinary, what kind of biosecurity protocols we should come up to reduce the exposure of my animals to diseases. Where should I get my replacements? What's the source of the health source? Another tool we have as a veterinarians is if you have a problem, several animals, they died, what you'll do, you will take that animal to a diagnostic lab. So that animal will inform you about what disease or potential problems you have on farm, how we can prevent that another animals can stop, not become sick. So we have in California, you have the diagnostic lab, California Animal Health and Food Safety Lab system. So we have one in Davis and spread across the state, where you can submit either the animal from the crops or the aborted tissues, could be the piglets, the placenta, or do an abortion serology panel, for example. So, and this will be a work in collaboration with your veterinary, try to identify where the problems are coming, how I can vaccinate or not, how I can stop or slow down the transmission of that diseases between animals. And finally, for this talk, what I would like to mention is, should we feed our pigs with food waste? And so in California, we have licensed food waste feeders in swine. And why we have these licensed facilities is because foreign animal disease, so FAD, classical swine fever and foot mouth disease, they can be spread by feeding raw garbage from meat products to swine. So if you feed meat products, they can carry certain virus and they can infect those animals. This is particularly important for foreign animal diseases. That's how we know that some of countries were free of ASF or foot-and-mouth disease, they enter in that country through garbage. So what we have a program in California is this swine garbage feeding facility. So our facilities that feeds, will be a facility or farm that feeds any meat garbage to pigs. And how we define this meat garbage is a waste material derived from all or part of the meat of animal or other animal material. So all meat garbage should be sterilized prior to being fed to swine. So there is a temperature that should be cooked for 30 minutes. Although if you are feeding garbage from household, from your own property, and that is fed directly to swine, there is an exception. How about other products? As produced bakery goods, dairy products may be fed without heat treatment, only if it's kept completely separate from untreated meat garbage. So we have several food waste feeders in swine in California. They are licensed by CDFA Animal Health Branch headquarters. They need to be renewed and they keep records. If you're interested for more about it, more information about it, here is the link. There is a nice fact sheet as well about risks associated with feeding raw and improperly cooked food waste to swine for your reference. And with that, thank you for your attention. So that's all I have for today. I try to touch base some of concepts general for biosecurity and the consequences in animal health. Here is my link tree where you can find the different projects, inclusive the one I mentioned, the farm animal, risk mitigation, prevent, prepare, and evaluate. If you are interested to work on the biosecurity plan on your farm, please let me know. It is my email. Please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much for your time.